Everyone, welcome to Mechanical Moments at Mercie J. I am your host, Rick Smith, Certified Master Technician. Now, I have a 2-year-old grandson, and he talks to me in his own language. And when he talks to me, he talks like I should understand everything he's saying. Well, sometimes I think I and other mechanics and shop owners act like 2-year-olds. We talk to you with all of these terms that are very difficult for you to understand. So I thought today I would take the time to go over the anatomy of an engine so you could maybe understand some of that language a little bit better. Now this particular engine that we have, it spun a rod bearing, so that's something you may have heard in the past. And we'll talk about that a little bit farther in the video. But it spun it because we had basically a lack of oil changes. It built up sludge and then it ran out of oil and it damaged the engine. Now, before you get too hard on the vehicle owner, you need to understand that they've only had the car for about 4 months. So all that sludge buildup was really due to the previous owners of the vehicle. So a few lessons to be learned here. Number 1, don't go beyond your oil change intervals. Number 2, make sure you check the oil in between oil changes. Number 3, have a professional look at used cars for you. And number 4, look for a car that has records with it, maintenance records, because that's the best way to know if it's been maintained, and be willing to pay a little bit more for that car. So anyway, there's our lessons. Let's talk about the engine. We did an autopsy on this one, so you can see there's a lot of parts here. This is our engine block, and these big holes you see are the cylinders in the engine block. Now these cylinders are actually numbered. We have 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6 on this engine. And so this is a 6-cylinder engine. So if you were at some point where maybe you've heard in the past, you have a number 2-cylinder misfire. Well, on this particular engine, number 2 is over here, and that would be the cylinder that's misfiring. The rest of them are doing okay. Now within each cylinder, we have something called a piston. This is a piston right here, and it moves up and down in the cylinder. It's attached to a piston or connecting rod, which is this part here, and this part of the connecting rod connects to a crankshaft. So here's how all that works. On a bicycle you have a crankshaft, and attached to that crankshaft are 2 pedals. So as you pedal your bike, it motivates down the road. Well, the crankshaft of the engine, it's almost identical to that, only instead of 2 feet pushing on the pedals, we have 6 pistons and rods pushing on the crankshaft, making it go down the road. So basically what we have is on your bike, your foot would be like this part of the connecting rod. This would be like your shin right here. And then this is like your knee. So in a bicycle, we burn muscle to push the bike and get it moving down the road. On the top of this piston, we burn fuel from your tank, and that's how we get it to motivate down the road. Now, down where the foot of the situation goes, this is what is called a rod bearing. And it's basically 2 small shells. And in this particular engine, it ran out of oil. And so it began to damage this metal. And when it did, then it spun this bearing inside the connecting rod. So that's why we have a spun bearing. So there's the basic bottom part of the engine. The next part we have is a cylinder head. This is the top of the cylinder head. This is the bottom of the cylinder head. If you see some dark circles in there, those are the valves, okay? This sits on top of the pistons on the engine. Now between the cylinder head and the engine block is a head gasket. You may have heard the term a blown head gasket before. One of the reasons we want to avoid blown head gaskets is because, as you can see, it's basically in the middle of the engine, so it's very labor intensive to replace it. Head gasket failures are most commonly caused by heating issues. So at Mercie J, our recommendation is if you're leaking coolant, if your fans aren't working right, if your temperature gauge is doing anything funky, don't drive the car. Shut it down, tow it in. Let's try to not damage that head gasket. Okay, so your engine is the heart of your vehicle. So just like the heart in your body, the heart in your body pumps blood, the engine actually pumps the fuel that comes in. So it draws fuel in, burns it, and then pumps it out of the exhaust pipe. In order to do that, that those valves that are in the cylinder head have to open and close at the proper time relative to the movement of the pistons. This is a camshaft, and you can see it has these little bumps on it. These are called lobes, and that's what opens and closes the valves. Now, this particular vehicle has 4 camshafts, and it has 2 in each head, and it's called a dual overhead cam because 2 on the top over the head, dual overhead cam, so we have a total of 4. Now, in order for this engine to pump properly, relative to the movement of the pistons in the crankshaft, the valves have to open at the right time, so the camshafts are driven by a timing chain. This times the valves according to the movement of the pistons in the engine. And so this is a very important part. Now, some cars have a timing belt. This is a timing belt, so it functions the same as a chain, except it's not metal, it's rubber. And if you can see in the video, we have a series of teeth on this, but in this section right in front of my face, there's a few teeth that are missing because rubber over time deteriorates. So to keep us from getting stranded on the side of the road or possibly doing damage to those valves, we need to replace belts at regular intervals, but not chains. So there's a quick rundown of the anatomy of an engine. And so I appreciate you taking the time to watch our video. And until next time, blessings to you and safe travels.